Welcome to More Than a Conversation, the podcast where we will meet and greet and discuss everything from religion to history to theology, philosophy, business, leadership, and sometimes just hear great life stories. We're going to talk to some of the most interesting people in the world of business, the church, and community leaders. Sometimes you'll just hear me talking about whatever subject might be in the headlines for the day, or just something I think will be interesting to you. This is Patrick Conley, and I'm hoping that this will be more than a conversation for you. Hello, and welcome to today's edition of More Than a Conversation. I am joined today by pastor and comedian, and I know that might seem like an odd combination when you first hear it, but you're going to hear a great story today. Pastor and comedian Mickey Bell from Bessemer, Alabama. Pastor Mickey, thank you so much for joining me today.
What's up, brother? Thank you for having me. I love it.
I'm excited to get you on. We've been talking about connecting. We've been trying to connect on a couple other things as well. First of all, I don't know whether I'm supposed to call you Mickey or Pastor Mickey. You've got a persona going with your stage work and all those things. That being said, comedian and pastor. I mean, right from the beginning, I know you planted a church, but tell me about that life.
The church life, actually, it all kind of started coming together. I've always been one who would cut up and have fun with people, and people have always known me to be that type of person. And even in the ministry, just in preaching, it has always come across as being humorous. I could make people laugh. People said that I could get on their toes and make them enjoy it because they'd laugh about it the entire time. So it's just something that's always been there. Ministry has always been there. But the comedy started pretty recent. In fact, we just went on the road full time with it in November. And it just kind of came from a very dark place in my life. And that's kind of where it started. And we can get more into that in just a second. But yeah, man, just ministry in general has always been in my life. It's always been in my bloodstream. And comedy is just another arm, another extension of how we can reach people that are hurting.
So tell me your story. You are in Alabama now. Is that where you're from?
Yes, I grew up in Alabama, was raised in Alabama. I'm an Alabama Crimson Tide fan, so that means I'm saved and I'm sealed and I'm going to heaven. Roll Tide. I just always had to put that in. I feel like I have to, especially when I'm talking to people from North Carolina. So I had to share just the fact that I've been in the ministry. I was in the ministry. I was serving a church. We were averaging about 500 people. It was a growing church. And man, I started making some sinful decisions. I started making some sinful mistakes that cost me in a matter of 10 minutes to lose my home as well as my job at the church. And so I was sitting there and homeless, unemployed, wondering if my family was even going to stay with me. That took me into a year long of the deepest, darkest depression I have ever experienced in my life. And I'm talking about a lot of pain, a lot of guilt. I did not want to live. I wanted to take my life. And what made it even worse was that the people from the church and the church leaders that I was serving was trying to help me do that. They wanted me to disappear. They wanted me to leave because they thought that if I would leave the community, that it would make them look better because not everything was done on the up and up. That's another podcast for another time, but I was hurting. And I had a pastor who reached out to me and he said, "Mickey, do you want to be healed?" And I did not even think that that was an option. And so after kind of talking and him kind of winning over some of my confidence, for an entire year, I met with 4 pastors, a Christian psychologist, and a Christian physician. And we met every week for a year, holidays and all, every week for a year. And that was just to get me out of bed. I did not want to go out in public. In fact, I didn't know if my family was going to stay with me. I remember having a conversation with my wife, and I told her, I said, "Look, everybody else has left me. You have every reason to leave me. Why don't you leave?" And I'll never forget what she said. She says, "I really want to." She says, you don't understand. I want to leave you, but I can't. And this was one of those pivotal moments that kind of saved my life. Because when she told me that, I said, all right, tell me, you're going to have to talk more. What do you mean you can't leave me? She says, God won't let me. She goes, I am begging him to let me leave, and he won't let me. She said, the reason I can't leave you is because, Mickey, you've got more inside of you that this world needs to see. And if I leave, I'm going to mess that up. In that moment, that's when everything started breaking loose with me. And so in the midst of hearing that and having that very strong conversation with my wife, in the meetings that I was having, that's when God started breaking loose some things in my life, and I started the healing process.
So while you're dealing with this process, while you're meeting with these pastors, physician, counselor, so on and so forth, it seems to me that when Christians, when people in ministry especially, are dealing with such situations, it's hard to find four people that will be willing to meet with them individually, much less together. Did you find that it was difficult to begin these conversations, or how were your initial conversations when you realized you were heading towards a dark spot, when you could feel that darkness closing in? And I know we're quickly getting into this conversation, and perhaps folks that are listening will gain some insight from it. But oftentimes that can be felt as it's building. And you no doubt started trying to reach out, trying to find someone. How did that process work when you started trying to reach out, or did you try to reach out? Tell me about that, when you knew things were getting worse.
All right. So when I was headed down that road toward depression, all I knew to do was go to church. I have been preaching that. I've been preaching since I was 17 years old, been in church all my life, raised in a Christian home. All I knew was I got to get to church. The problem was I was trying to go to church in the same community that I was serving. When I went to those churches, something always happened. Someone would either approach me and tell me that I'm not welcomed at that church, or someone inside the church would text my former church, and by the time service was over, some of those deacons and elders would show up at the church. And they always showed up trying to embarrass me and trying to run me off. It was at that moment that I went into the darkest pit, because I had tried doing what I thought was right into going to church, and the church rejected me. And that was in the moment where I was no longer headed into a dark spot. I was there. I had already punched my ticket, and I was there. And I was trying to figure out a way to get out. So when the pastor called me, at this time, you have to understand, I'm not trusting anyone. I am not feeling like that I can share anything with anybody, because I put myself out there. I put my family out there as well. And it's almost like the churches in the area just kind of slapped us in the face. Now, I'm not going to say all churches are like this. I would love to use that disclaimer real quick. All churches are not like this. And all churches are not going to treat people the way that I was treated. I'm just having to share the story of what I went through, because that's where it sent me. So when we first started the meetings, the very first meeting I went in, I was very apologetic. They were coming into the meeting trying to convince me of what I had done wrong. I knew what I'd done wrong. And so we were able to skip ahead quite a bit, simply because I know what I had done wrong. I admitted to them what I did wrong. I confessed as the Bible told me to confess, and that really started helping. And when I saw their response to my confession, I knew they had a heart for me, and I knew they had a heart for God and wanting to see what was best for me. And from that very first day onward, after I had my confession time and after I opened up to them and I saw their initial response, because you got to understand, I was in tears. I was in what they call the ugly cry. I was crying like a Baptist woman in church. I mean, I was letting it go, and they were crying with me. They were not judging me. They were crying. They were just as hurt as I was, and I could feel that.
So now the pastors you ended up speaking with, the pastors that ended up being the ones that helped you,
Were any of that group initially people who had given you the cold shoulder or pushed you away, or was this a whole new group of pastors?
Whole new group of pastors. Whole new group of pastors. In fact, these pastors were so mad once they started hearing everything because they started getting phone calls. And so they were sharing with me how they knew I was telling them the truth, because when the word got out that these particular pastors was trying to help and restore me and trying to help me to get back on my feet, they started receiving phone calls. And by the time we got to the third or fourth meeting, they were fighting mad. I mean, because not at me, but they were fighting mad in the sense that it kind of gave them more of the initiative, or kind of gave them more of that tenacity of, we're not letting you fall through the cracks, because we understand that you're fighting hell wide open, and they were ready to fight with me.
So obviously the first place that you would probably go, I'm assuming you were probably ministering in a church that was involved in a larger denomination or group. The first place you probably go is to churches that are like yours, churches that are similar, churches perhaps that are even part of the same organization. Is that where you went first?
It is, but it wasn't because of that reason. I had some pastors who tried to reach out to me, and the pastors had the right heart, and they were like, come to our church, it's safe. These were individuals that were trying to talk to me during the week. But then once I got there, it was their church membership, or let me just say, some unseasoned Christians, untrained. They had not been in the ministry long, and so they just started acting out. So it wasn't always the pastor's fault. And of course, the churches couldn't happen. They couldn't help what would happen if other people started showing up from the other church. So they meant well. It wasn't like they were trying to get, I went due to an invitation. I didn't just show up at a church. I went because the pastor had called me and said, you're safe to come to our church. And then once I got there, they started seeing some true colors in their own membership.
The pastors that ended up being the ones that helped you, did they share organizational relations to you, or were they just a completely different group of pastors?
No, they were all in the same denomination. The pastor that actually called me, he had just finished his doctoral thesis on church discipline. And a lot of people, when they hear the word discipline, they think kicking someone out of the church, but it's actually the opposite. It's actually the same thought process as church restoration. It's not that we try to kick people out. It's that we try to restore them so that they can serve again. And I was not the first pastor, minister, servant, leader that he has dealt with. He had about 20 other cases that he had worked with to prove his thesis. And so this was something that he was very passionate about. And I could tell that when we talked. And so I felt like I was in good hands. And he would have never put me in the same room with individuals that did not have the same heart as he did in wanting to see me restored.
So it sounds like you really came into some grace, both of a person and of God. And what a blessing it was, no doubt, to find that person. It sounds like you found the right person to help you in that moment. So as you're coming back, and as this group is working with you, at this point, do you find yourself coming out of that dark place? You talked about being in that darkness. You talked about your wife telling you, look, I want to, but God is saying this. At what point are you seeing light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, first of all, whenever I first started going to these meetings, I had always heard the verse in the Bible where it says, confess your sins one to another. I hated that verse. I hated it. I mean, even before all this happened, I hated it. I'm like, I'm not going to tell my sins to anybody. Confess your sins one to another. I'm like, heck to the no. I'm not telling anybody anything that I've done wrong. But I finally learned what that verse actually meant and what it was for when I went through this. And that was because when I started going to these meetings and I started confessing, and it wasn't just confessing my sin, it was confessing how I felt. It was confessing what I was thinking. It was confessing, the things that were going on in my mind. And so when I started talking out loud to these individuals that I could trust, I started experiencing what that verse actually meant and why God put it in the Bible. And that was because I started actually feeling a little better. It was probably about 3 months into us meeting before I ever started seeing, as you described, me coming out of that dark place. It was probably about 3 months of meeting before I started feeling that. But as we kept meeting and as I kept talking, which, by the way, I want to emphasize to the listeners, that was the most important part of that meeting. It wasn't just the fact that I had godly men there. It wasn't the fact that I had a physician there and I had a counselor there. It wasn't that I had all them listening. It was the fact that I was speaking. Because you can have all the people you want surrounding you, but until you actually do the confessing and you actually start getting your thoughts out verbally and you start getting it out of your system, that's where the healing began. It took about 3 months for me to recognize that. But I could tell you that I remember even to this day, those moments that we met and I could feel the breaking start to take place and I could start seeing some light at the end of the tunnel.
So you see light at the end of the tunnel as you're going through the process. Now, I want to go back to before this situation happens.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned, confessing your faults. The scriptures teach us, when someone's overtaken in a fault, to restore them, so on and so forth. However, it feels like we talk about that a lot more than we do that, or we talk about it better than we practice it, for the most part. As a pastor, there is so much pressure to perform.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this sense of lack of trust. In fact, recently, there was a conversation that was had between two church leaders, and one of them was telling me about it. And essentially, they were talking about having more connection, more connectivity. And when they mentioned that, the reply was simply that the reason that couldn't be was that leaders didn't trust one another. It's as if when faults are expressed, it's just going to become political ammunition for down the road. Let me ask you this, though. I believe there might be something to it, if while you're headed down that road, while you're headed towards your fault, towards your fall, as you're going towards that place where no doubt you're experiencing some spiritual blindness and obviously some apathy and all the things that go along with leading to that moment. As you're headed towards that, did you have anybody then that you could talk to openly about what you were dealing with? And would that have made a difference if you had?
It would have made a difference, but absolutely not. I didn't have a person. And it's exactly how you just put it so perfectly, in the sense that you can't trust people. Now, I would go to the pastors' conferences and I would sit there and I would listen to how you need an accountability partner and you need somebody that can be straight up in your life and you can be somebody that's going to stand there with you. The problem with that is that those individuals in my life, if they were potentials, showed their true colors when it came time for me to really need somebody. Because those people that told me, hey, I'm here for you, you can talk to me, I'm going to hold you up, I'm never going to go against you, were the first people to turn on me. They were the first people to throw me into the fire. So you only have to have that instance happen to you once or twice to where you put a complete brick wall up in front of you, and it's like you can't share your secrets, you can't share your struggles. And I know this for a fact now on the other side of this, because as we're going out, my wife and I, we have pastors who call us. We have pastors' wives who reach out to us. We have staff members who reach out to us and say, I can't let any of this out or I could lose my job, but I need help. That's the reason we're doing what we're doing. It's not so much to get on stage. That's just a part of it. The comedy is just a part of what we're doing. There's a much bigger picture here, and that's to help people that are fighting this. We kind of use the word depression because we have a lot more people who can identify with that word. But when it comes to staff members and when it comes to pastors and pastors' wives and church leaders, there's no one out there they can trust. And so when they hear my story and they hear what I've been through, they know that I feel their pain. And it takes them a little while, but we'll have them. I mean, they'll ask for my phone number. They will reach out to me on social media or by email, and we will try to pour into them, and I don't force them to talk, but I let them know that, I am someone that will listen, that will not try to get them fired. And it's still a struggle for some of them to open up and admit, because they don't know what the hidden agendas may be.
That is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. When you say these people reaching out, who do I talk to without being fired? Who do I talk to that's not going to hurt my trajectory if they have any aspiration of maybe one day being placed somewhere or being hired somewhere or whatever? Who do I reach out to in those situations? That is an increasingly difficult conversation to have. Where should a couple go when they're struggling, perhaps a pastoral couple or a ministry couple? They're struggling in their marriage. Who do they go talk to that's not going to be fodder later? Sadly, more often than not, people will have to cross organizational lines, hoping that they can find trust somewhere else, someone that's not on the same political ladder as themselves. As sad as that is, I often wonder about things like pastoral suicides. That's been something we've seen again and again and again.
Mm-hmm.
Now, your story has a sense of uniqueness. Well, everyone's story is unique to them, but you have a sense of uniqueness in that maybe yours came and yours was generated at a different point in your life, but obviously, or by different activities, you had a fall, and then in that those situations happen. However, I would also surmise that there's some self-destructive behavior that's leading you into that moment. That being said, when we're dealing with things like, you've got pastors that perhaps don't have that situation, just the pressure of pastoring has built up to the point that we read the news, pastors committing suicide while their congregation waits for them to come to church on Sunday morning.
Yes.
We've heard those stories again and again. And I wonder, if a pastor's on the brink, who can he pick up the phone in that moment and call? Well, for a lot of pastors, there isn't anyone.
The majority, yeah.
And I truly believe that if this is not something that we deal with, now I have noticed that there's been a lot more information being put out. Of course, I pastor a Church of God, and our organization is putting out more information about our pastoral care ministries and so on and so forth. But there is a history amongst the ranks of pastors where this lack of trust, or this, there's a chink in that guy's armor, so let's talk about him. Let's use that as a way to discard or disregard or whatever, or disrepute this individual. But I wonder, in that moment when that man or woman is on the brink, who can they pick up the phone and call that it's not going to, for lack of a better word, it's not going to cost them in the future? Or the other side of that is, in those moments, how many times would they have not have arrived at that moment had they had someone such as yourself? When you were talking about, if I'd had some, things would have been different, no doubt. I wonder how many people arrive at bad situations, both in both in bad decisions that they make, all the way up to choosing to end their own lives, that we could have done so much better had we simply had someone that they could have talked to, had there really been accountability groups and pastoral covenant groups that really operated as what they were supposed to operate as opposed to just becoming another thing, another entity, another political maneuver. And in all reality, the way that pastors deal with one another, I truly believe that we as members of the ministry have a lot of blood on our hands.
Yes, sir.
By the way that we've dealt with such things. Pastors will stand in the pulpit and preach, and I'm about to hit all the pastors that are listening, but we'll stand in the pulpit and preach about division and backbiting and gossip and all those things, because oftentimes it's affecting us when it's happening in our church. Mm-hmm. But boy, when you get to the conference or the camp meeting or the convention, man, the stories sure do fly. It's interesting that we operate on different levels. So, I think we see that, well, for lack of a better word, that hypocrisy among our own ranks, and that leads to that lack of trust. And again, I think we've got a lot of blood on our hands. So here's a question for you. How do we change this culture?
One of the things I think we have to realize as pastors and as church leaders, there is a spirit that we have to deal with, and that spirit is competition. We have a competitive spirit in that we want our churches to be the biggest, we want our churches to be the most recognized, and we want our churches to be the best. Now, before I go on, let me say this. There's really nothing wrong with a pastor wanting that for his church. Every pastor. That's like saying, you know, I'm a plumber and I want to be the best plumber in town. Why can't I be the best pastor in town? All right, but what happens is the enemy will come in, and we have a competitive spirit in the sense of, I've got to beat out this other church, and I don't need these people going to his church. I need the biggest tithers coming to my church. And so we have this spirit of competition. So I think one of the things we have to do first is that we have to eliminate and realize that God did not call us to build a church. God did not call us to do anything but to shepherd his sheep and get people ready for the end time. And we have got such a mindset that we're trying to build magnificent facilities because we're trying to impress people. Watch this. We're spending all of our energy trying to impress people who don't care anything about us. We're trying to impress people who are just going to turn around and stab us in the back if they get an opportunity. That's why pastors are losing their jobs, because they're always venting down instead of venting up. They're always venting to their own people, and that's a no-no. So if you're doing that, if you're listening and doing that, you need to stop that immediately. No one in your church should be put in a position to where they hear all of your venting. I don't care how close to you they want to be. I don't care how much they tell you that they've been called alongside of you and that you can trust them. Never vent down, always vent up, because that will get you in trouble every time, because you're talking about sharing your most intimate stuff with people who can be influenced by the enemy. And so that's the reason that you have to put safeguards in who you're talking with. One of the best things that I would recommend as far as the pastors go is the pastors need to realize what every individual that deals with depression realizes. And that's simply the fact that depression always makes you feel like you're alone in this, that there is no one else dealing with what you're dealing with, that no one else can understand what you're feeling. And that's just a lie of the devil. That's just one of the many lies that he tries to tell pastors, just like he tries to tell everyone else. And I think one of the things, and I commend you for this, is that we need to talk about it, in the sense that I have people who come up to me at our concerts, and after they hear my story and after they have laughed, they come up and they say, it's almost like you're saying that it's okay that I have depression. I'm like, it is. I mean, you've just got to deal with it. I mean, you don't want to let it overtake your life, but you're not less of a person. And then I'll have people say, well, is it okay for me to take medication? Because my pastor is telling me to stop taking my medication and that I need to just trust the Lord. And I want to get to that pastor and I want to say, do you tell all your diabetics to stop taking their insulin? Do you tell all your cancer patients don't take your chemo because you just need to trust the Lord? And a lot of people and a lot of pastors don't know how to speak on depression because they've never dealt with it. And it seems like the easy cop-out is you just need to get closer to the Lord, and you just need to read your Bible more, and you just need to pray more. And if I heard that one more time while I was going through my depression, I probably would have slapped the pastor because I'm like, I don't need no spiritual jargon. If you don't know what to say, just admit it and don't say anything. But I'll tell you this, and I'm talking from experience and the people that I've dealt with. The people that are dealing with depression are probably reading their Bibles more than the pastor is. And they're probably praying a whole lot more than the pastor is because they're praying for their life while he's praying for growth in the church. So before you start summing it up that they're just not close to the Lord, some of them are close to the Lord and they're still struggling. And we have many people in the Bible that dealt with this same issue. I mean, come on, Jesus Christ himself, right before he went to the cross, he went and got alone with God and he says, this is too much for me. Let this cup pass from me if it be your will. Jesus Christ was dealing with a heaviness. Now, we don't see depression, the word depression used in the scriptures, but when you find the Greek word that is used for how we get our word depression, it's also anxiety. It's all through the scriptures. Elijah, he was running away from Jezebel. He got underneath the juniper tree and he says, Lord, just take my life. He wanted to die. But we've got to understand that depression is a real thing. We've got to deal with the issue. And we've got to understand that just as many Christians are dealing with this as those who are unchurched people, but they come into church and they feel like they can't talk about it because it makes them less spiritual. And I think just being open about it and helping people understand that it is an issue, helping those that are dealing with it know that they're not alone and that they can actually overcome this thing, I think that's the start.
It's interesting when you spoke about the idea of not being spiritual leading to these struggles, and also the idea that it's been equated, well, you need to be more spiritual. Well, at the end of the day, you spoke of Elijah. Elijah is coming off a spiritual high point. He's coming off the defeat of the prophets of Baal, and here we find him just a few days later praying to be killed. But the same goes.
Yes.
Job prays for death. Moses prays for death.
Yes.
Jeremiah says, he speaks of it would have been better had he died or not been born. I'm trying to think. Job, I should have died when I was a child. You go all the way through. John the Baptist, the forerunner of Christ, he knows who Jesus is. He gets in prison, and obviously the darkness comes upon him. He had pointed, behold, the Lamb of God, and now he's in prison saying, is he the one, or should we search for another? So this idea of spiritual darkness, it's as old as anything. Now, again, you talked about, pastors, and in fact, you said that you don't, maybe they haven't dealt with depression. Well, in all reality, I don't know very many people that are in a position with the pressures of pastoring that haven't dealt with it. We've just spiritualized it. We call it, I'm under attack of the enemy, or I'm under a burden, or I'm under whatever other thing we can come out and say besides depression, because depression happens to others. Depression happens to weaker people. Depression happens to non-spiritual people. Now, for me, I'm over here, not able to get out of bed, not able to talk to anybody, weeping every time I think about going back outside. But that's not depression. That's a spiritual battle. No, it is what it is. It's depression. And whatever label we put on it, it has the same results. It's the same situation, and it's got to be dealt with for sure. Now, I believe I saw somewhere that in the process of all of this, you wrote a book. Is that right?
I did. I actually wrote a book. It's called I Am David. And what I did was I took the life of David and I took my life, and there was such strong parallel that I actually tell my story while also telling David's story. And it's a very insightful book that leads you through my path, because you alluded to this a while ago, in the sense that when I was going through this year of meeting with a psychologist and a physician and these pastors, we started identifying some issues that I had as a child. I found out at the age of 13 that I was adopted at birth. In that moment, I had something attached to me that I did not know was attached to me, and that was abandonment issues. So now all of a sudden, for the rest of my high school years, and I look back on it now and I can see it, but at the time I was blinded to it. I could see that I was always finding backups. Just in case this friend left me, I always had a backup. Just in case this girlfriend left me, I always had a backup. All the way through my life. And I did that with church people, man. I did that with church people because I had these abandonment issues. So we started identifying all that. Well, all the way through this book, I tell you everything back to my childhood, every mistake that I've made. I go into great detail about the sin that I committed. I go into great detail in how I felt and what I was feeling and what I did, but I also tell you how I got redemption. And it's a very easy read, but it's a book that is transforming many lives today. We're getting testimony. And this is actually, you were talking about the pastors and the staff leaders. This is usually where it begins. They will get a copy of my book, read it, identify themselves, reach out to me and say, okay, I just read your book. You just told my life story. And so that's usually how that starts. But it's called I Am David, a pastor's fall into grace. The popular saying is a pastor's fall from grace. But as you mentioned a while ago, I didn't fall from grace. I actually fell into grace, because when I fell into the mighty hand of God who kept me from hitting rock bottom.
And where can people find that book?
They can get that on Amazon. You can get the Kindle version on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, anywhere that you find your favorite book. If you want to order it directly from us, you can go to my website. It's themickeybell.com. and you can order it there, and they'll ship it out to you. But anywhere you find your books, you can get it ordered through there.
So you have got a lot going on. You've got a book you've written. Now you're stepping into comedy. I know that you were heavily involved as a musician at one time. Is that correct? Hall of Fame.
I have, I traveled. I traveled in the Southern gospel music industry. The Nealons, I traveled with the Nealons, Tony Gore, Majesty, the Steels, as well as many others. But that was in my teenage years, in my young adult years. Got into the Hall of Fame with the Nealons. But the comedy thing I didn't really see coming. But as I look at it now, it's one of those moments where you go, yeah, God knows what he's doing. Because what it's enabling me to do when you come to one of my shows is that people don't know, unless they hear your podcast and then come see me, they may know what's coming, because I'm kind of revealing some of my secrets here. But unless they don't, they're going to come to a show, and they're going to come to a comedy show, and they're going to laugh. We're going to laugh. And then right in the middle of it, I'm going to flip the script. And I'm going to tell you why I'm laughing. I'm going to share my story about depression. And if I could just capture the picture of the people's faces, they all look like they've been hit by a brick. Because they're like, wait a minute, this thing, he just got me. Because what comedy does, laughter and comedy allows you to break down the walls. So now as I take you through my show, we're breaking down walls, one brick at a time. Then all of a sudden, when I've got you to where you're laughing and you're openly laughing and you're trusting me, then all of a sudden I hit you with a word. God is using that moment to transform lives. And I didn't see it coming. I did not see it coming, nor did I see the stages that I'm currently on. We're opening up for some pretty big artists. And I just got off the phone with my agent today, and we've got even more coming up that is going to be even bigger. It looks like in 2020, I'm actually going to get to cross over and open up for some country artists because they're attracted to the story. Hey, man, I'm just a guy who started preaching, who had a fall, but God is raising me up because, and I think a lot of this too is the fact that I'm not afraid to share with you that I failed. And a lot of people are afraid. I don't want anybody to know. You know what? It's freeing for me to say it, because now that I've told you what I've done, you can't use it against me. So I guess that's my mentality. But it's enabled a lot of people who are hiding their stories to be attracted to me. And some of that comes from the country music industry. And so I'm just looking for some great things to happen to where we can share the story and help more people.
Yeah, that's amazing. The idea of having the opportunity to get your story, and it's not even your story. It's his story. It's the story.
Yes.
It's the story of grace, and you get that story in front of more people, and hopefully you'll be able to have thousands of people hear that there is grace for them in their situation. I do want to ask you a little bit about comedy. Were you a comedy fan before getting into comedy, or is this just something that came up organically?
I was a comedy fan. I didn't study it. I didn't just, I always enjoy comedy. In fact, if we were going to the movies, my wife knows I'm going to go watch a comedy before I watch action or anything else. I love good stand-up comedy. But when God started showing me what he wanted to do, I actually took the initiative and I reached out to a comic out in California who started coaching me. And for about 6 months, he started coaching me on writing, figuring out who I am, what type of material I was going to do, and that sort of thing. So I actually put some study behind it. It's not like I just jumped on stage and boom, here I am. I actually put some work behind it. But I wanted to be very careful because my thing was I didn't want it to just be church comedy. I wanted to be able to go into a comedy club if God permitted that. I wanted to be able to go on a country music stage if God permitted that. And it wouldn't be like, oh, here's a preacher, he's just going to preach to us. I wanted to have the type of comedy that whether you're in church or out of church. Now, I do laugh a lot at the church because, we do have some fun stuff. You have to admit, we do some crazy things. And so, but the people outside the church are just as willing to laugh at us as we are. And so I pull some of that out. And use it. But yeah, I just wanted to have a good set. I wanted people to be able to enjoy it and laugh, but I wanted it to be in a general sense and not just, oh, he's only accepted in the churches. I want to be able to go on any stage that I went on.
I know you say that you tell some funny stories about church. What's the funniest thing you ever saw happen in church?
Well, one of the things that I talk about right now is when I first went to my first Church of God to do a comedy act, and I'm not going to say where it is, and I'm not going to mention the pastor's name because maybe I'll get to go back and get some more stories. But I went, and right as I was there, he told me, he said, all right, we're going to open up with two songs, and we're going to turn it over to you. This is a Sunday night service. And I'm like, okay, great. Well, Church of God, 2 songs means 45 minutes. And so after 45 minutes of praise and worship, they're sitting there. Well, I hear Melmo in the back, and Melmo is getting excited. And I can hear Melmo getting excited. Well, then I hear Melmo getting closer. And as Melmo came around me, I noticed 3 things about Melmo that was taking place. Number 1 was that Melmo was running with her eyes closed. She had no clue where she was going. Second thing I noticed about Melmo was that she done danced right out of her shoes. She barefooted. I'm like, all right, I'm okay with that. But then when she got in front of me, I realized Melmo done shouted her teeth out. And so here she is running around the church. She gets right in front of the church, right in front of the pulpit, and boom, she hits the floor. She's out cold. Well, I'm okay with that. That doesn't scare me. I mean, I can join in with the best of them. I love Pentecostals. I love the Church of God. I love the services. I'll worship with you anywhere. But while she's laid out on the floor, the pastor gets up and he goes, well, we have a comedian here tonight who's going to come up here and make us laugh. And I'm looking at him like, no, I'm not. No, I'm pointing at the floor going, what are we going to do about Melmo? Somebody needs to get because as a comedian, you're trained to make fun of what happens around you. I'm like, no, y'all can't do this to me. We don't even know where Melmo's teeth is, and you want me to come up on stage and make people laugh. So that was one of the first things that ever happened to me.
Wow. Welcome to comedy in the church. Right?
But, people love that story because everybody knows a Melmo that has done that.
Sure.
And everybody's been in those services where some crazy things have happened. So it's things like that I will share. And it's a lot of fun.
Now, I enjoy comedy. One of the things that is difficult is trying to find a lot of comedians. The comedic term is working blue. They work with material that obviously wouldn't work in a church and that sort of thing. The problem that I have found as a comedy fan, just to talk comedy for a minute, is that you've got this whole world of comedians that they work blue, they work in topics and subjects that I don't want to hear. So I go, let me find some Christian comedians. And then I'm like, okay, it's a little cheesy. It's a little corny. It's just, I feel like now there's a few that stand out. So I'm hoping that you will be blessed and you'll be able to grow and bring some good Christian comedy. Again, there's a few out there that are doing a great job with Christian comedy, but I'm sure you've had to deal with that same thing in listening to comedy, where you're like, okay, if I hear something that's decent as far as towards my Christian sensibilities, it's sometimes it's just bad comedy, for no other way to put it. It's just not as good.
And that's the reason, and I may get a little heat about this, but that's the reason that I do not advertise myself as a Christian comedian. Because people, when you say Christian comedian, people automatically assume, oh, this is going to be cheesy stuff. And there are people, and they know it. I'm not going to call their names, but there are comedians out there that would be considered Christian comedians that would never make it in a comedy club. Their material would never allow them to be able to stand up in a comedy, and they know this. They know that. That's the reason they're staying away from it. And I guess that's why I did the training that I did, and I continue to do the training. I get coaches all the time to come in and help me and send them my programs and help me write. So I'm constantly training and to get better. But I think that's why I invested in that, because I did not want to be the cheesy comedian. And I think a lot of people, and I'll tell you this, another thing that's difficult in line with Christian comedy or comedy inside the church house is that we have a lot of stuck-up Christians that have forgotten how to laugh. And they take everything super sensitive. And so what you think we could laugh at a lot of times still may be a subject matter that we can't deal with. And so there are certain groups that we try to stay away from simply because they don't remember how to laugh, or they've got it in their head that you can't laugh in the church, that you've always got to be super spiritual. So I'm hoping that we can change that.
Yeah, and what I've noticed is that a lot of people, well, they like to point fingers and call others snowflakes and talk about how PC the world is. You know, oh, you can't. But then after saying that others are too sensitive, they'll be the most sensitive people in the world. At the end of the day, the comedian is doing his job.
Yeah, you've hired him to come in and you've hired him to make people laugh. And, you know, I pick on people in their skinny jeans. I pick on worship pastors. You know, I pick on drummers who, you know, are so popular that they have to have a bulletproof shield in front of them when they play drum. I mean, we pick on all types of pastors. We pick on all types of denominations. But at the end of the day, come on, laughter is good like medicine, and it does a body good.
Indeed, indeed. Well, Mickey, I appreciate you coming on and joining me today, talking a little bit about your story and talking about comedy. We've spent a good chunk of time together. I do feel like hopefully somebody's going to listen to this and come away and say, you know what, there's hope for me in my situation. Maybe someone who is currently falling will find that they're falling not out of grace, but into grace. Maybe somebody who's in that darkness can discover that there's a way out. Let me say this for anybody out there that's dealing with that. And if you're in a dark place, find somebody to talk to. At the end of the day, even if you find out that you can't trust them later, it's still not worth your life and the pressure that you're under. Whatever you're doing, wherever you're at, find somebody to talk to. There are people out there that can be trusted. Just find them. On the other side, don't find everybody to talk to.
Yes, yes. Can I add something? Can I add something?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
I want to add this to it because depending on when you're listening to this podcast, at the time that we're recording, I am actually in the process of building an online community. And this is going to be an online community for people who are dealing with depression to literally log in, and you register under an anonymous name. So you create your own username, create your own password. So you don't have, unlike Facebook, everybody would see your profile. So we're creating an online community that is a safe community for people to come on and talk about their struggles. And then I'm going to have licensed Christian psychologists who are also going to be a part of this community, to where you can log on anonymously, tell people what you're struggling. So if a pastor's out there and he says, I can't take the chance of people finding out, well, this will be a way for him to log on anonymously. No one would ever know who he was. He could share, and then we could hopefully get them in the right direction of getting in touch with people that could actually help them. So I will keep you updated as to where we are with this community. We're in the very first stages of it, but I know that they are building it now, and we're putting things, and we're going to have things like a forum to where you could go on and you could see people that are struggling with the same type of things you're struggling with. You could hear what they're doing, listen to their testimonies, communicate back and forth. But we're also I'm going to be interviewing individuals, and we're going to be doing a lot of things kind of like what you're doing here, except I'm just going to have one-off videos of people that are dealing with depression, sharing their stories, people that you will know in the news. We're going to have kind of like some video messages where we're just going to do some live chats where we're going to log on and you could ask questions, and we're going to answer those questions and encourage you, that sort of thing. So just have your listeners be kind of watching for this online community, because we kept saying all the way through this podcast that people need to learn where to go and talk, but they need to learn to talk and open up about their situation. We're creating a safe place for them to be able to do just that.
That's awesome. And in the meantime, where can people follow you? Where can they find out more information? Maybe they're looking for your comedy. Maybe they're interested in perhaps buying your book or anything else you got. I know you've always got something going on. Where can they find out more about you? Where can they follow you? What social media are you on, and so on and so forth?
Well, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can just find The Mickey Bell. That's the name of the website address as well. TheMickeyBell.com. If you'll go there, you can find out the concerts that we're doing. Currently, we're doing some dates with Jason Crabb. We've got about 20 more dates that we're going to do with him by the end of the year. I'm doing some dates with the Isaacs as well as Guy Penrod. And so you never know where we may show up. We're hoping like I said earlier, in the 2020, we're hoping to secure some dates with some country artists. And so if you'll just go to our website, you can order the book there, see our tour dates there, follow us on social media there, and just kind of keep up with what's going on. And listen, if anyone that is listening, you need to reach out to somebody now and go to my website, reach out to me. My team makes sure that I see all the messages that come to me, and I will be the one that personally responds to you. So if you're in that situation and you need to talk to someone right now, reach out to me. We'll get back in touch with you.
Thanks so much for joining us today, Mickey. I appreciate your time. Everybody go check out themickeybell.com. That's Mickey, M-I-C-K-E-Y, Bell, B-E-L-L.com. And hopefully you know how to spell themickeybell.com.
Yes, that would be helpful.
Yeah. Thanks, Mickey. Thank you for joining us today. And I hope you have a blessed week.
Brother, this was awesome. I hope I didn't talk too long for you. I am passionate about my story because I know it's going to help people. And I'm just thankful for you for doing what you're doing and trying to help people as well. And I just pray blessings over this podcast. And I'm ready for 1 million people to start liking this podcast and following you in everything that you do.
Thanks again for being part of More Than a Conversation today. If you'd like more content like this, check out my blog at www.pastorconley.com. That's PASTORCONLEY.com. Again, that's pastorconley.com. I'd also love to see you join us in worship at Garden Sanctuary. If you're ever in Rock Hill, South Carolina, or the greater Charlotte area, we'd love to have you stop by and worship with us. Check us out at www.gardensanctuary.org. That's gardensanctuary.org. Until next time, I hope this has been more than a conversation.